morning or evening, depending upon where you are. And we would like to start by sharing a little bit about their personal background with you. Ladies first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Joan. Dr. Joan is currently working as a medical officer, special grade in pediatrics in the Maroto Regional Referral Hospital. She holds a master's degree in medicine, specializing in pediatrics and child health from Makerere University, and also a bachelor's of medicine and science from Mombara University of Science and Technology. She's gone on additionally to gain certificates in applied clinical research and evidence-based medicine, also from Makerere University, and a certificate of emergency triage assessment and treatment plus admission care for sick children. As a medical professional, she has also had the privilege of having participated in other medical professions in the positions in the past. Dr. Joan was a resident student and senior house officer in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at the Mulongo National Referral and Treatment Hospital in Kampala. She also was a medical officer in the Infectious Disease Institute, where she handled clinical assessment, diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up of children and adults living with HIV and AIDS. She also was a medical officer at the Baylor College of Medicine Center for Excellence. And today, as a pediatrician, Dr. Joan also runs a private medical facility, a children's clinic called Jolly Child Clinic in Mbala City, Uganda. So Dr. Joan obviously has specialized in pediatrics and is going, when she rejoins us in a moment, she's going to be focusing her participation on including that medical aspect for you today, because we know, looking at our attendees, that we have a lot of medical professionals in Rwanda. So we've pulled Dr. Joan in for you all. Moving on, I hope you all recognize Bonny Alinga. Bonny Alinga is a WMI graduate scholar, just like you all. And by profession, Bonny Mark is a human resources generalist. But don't let that fool you. He is very involved. So I would like to share with you many of his current involvements, and I will begin with the list. So he hails from Lira, which is in northern Uganda, and he holds a bachelor's degree in business administration, and he majored in human resource management. So he's very knowledgeable about the subject that we're covering today. He also has gone on to earn a professional certificate in computer networking through the Cisco Certified National Academy, which is an international recognition. He is the founder and director of Nisi Telecom, which is an ICT firm in Mbali, in which he started in 2009. He is the executive director and founder of Solace for Hope Uganda, an NGO, also director and founder of the Nisi College School, a comprehensive high school supporting orphans and vulnerable children in this region of Uganda. He's the executive secretary and co-founder of iSave Investment Club, and has been involved with Rotary International since 2012. He has had the honor of serving as the president of the Rotary Club of Mbali, most recently in 2018 and 19, and currently serves as the director of projects and grant support for the regional Rotary district of International District of Uganda and Tanzania. So he's very involved in many, many social projects in leadership positions. So know that he's always available. I hope so, Bonnie Mark, for students, scholars, and graduates of WMI to reach out to him. He's a super resource as a WMI graduate. Speaking on WMI very briefly, he is a co-founder and served as the executive secretary of Fountains for Change, which is WMI's Uganda Fellowship, and has received a seed grant and also serves as a community grant mentor. So both of our guest speakers today are exceptional professionals within their fields. Lots of experience, even though they're quite young. And we hope that their presentation today will be very useful for all interviews that you'll have in the future. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and pass the presentation on to Bonnie Mark and Dr. Joan. Okay.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you everyone who has joined us this evening, this morning, from wherever you are. We will be covering a very interesting topic, that is the STAR method of interview. And let me just share my screen so that you're able to follow the presentation pretty well. I believe I don't need any extra explanation about who I am, because a number of you have met on physical Dream Big conference in Uganda and Nairobi. Just to dive straight into our presentation this evening, for me in Uganda and Dr. Joan, we are talking about the STAR methods of interview, and this is a structured manner of responding to behavioral-based interview questions by discussing the specific situation, task, action, and results of a situation you are describing for you to be very competitive in the job market and in the interview that you perhaps have applied for. And interestingly, apparently this technique is being applied by most of the organizations and companies around the globe. So the STAR method is a technique used to answer those behavior-based questions. And behavior-based questions forces you and me, the interviewer and the interviewee, to tell a story and to make me feel, yes, your story has got impact and can create impact in my organization or in my company. So these behavioral questions will force you or trigger you to tell your story, and a specific story that will give details from your past and demonstrate your experience and show that you are actually the best candidate for the position that you have applied for in a particular company, organization, or institution. So during the course of this webinar, we will be covering being successful in an interview, and covering under that, we will look at the golden rules of the interview using the STAR method. We'll look at knowing the organization. We'll look at knowing yourself, the applicant of the job. You will also be looking at the job itself. What do we look at in the job? For you to be successful, you must understand all these areas, the 4 areas that we are talking about here. We will also go into the preparation for the interview questions. And here we shall cover the interview questions, the traditional interview questions, the situation questions, where a doctor will come in handy to diagnose this further for us to understand from our perspective, knowing that she's a very experienced person in the medical field, apparently, and serving as a consultant. We shall also be looking at the behavioral-based questions, answering interview questions, focusing on the STAR method. And what is the STAR method? At the end of this conversation, we shall be in position to do the application of the STAR method, having covered all the above listed items. So in the STAR method, we will be doing preparation giving examples, using the STAR method. How do I approach a question, a behavioral question, a traditional question, a situation question, or a task question? If I'm being tasked to be in the position of a panelist or a manager or a consultant, and these questions are being posed to me to respond, how do I respond to that? Answering questions, the application of questions that do not actually require the STAR methods. We will not so much dwell on this one, but we will show you a basic how they differ from the ones that requires the STAR method approach. So to begin with, being successful in an interview, the golden rules. I've mentioned this. We need to know every time you apply for a job, now you're getting out of the campus or you've been applying for the job. You've applied for 1, 2, 3 jobs. You have not been called for the interview, or perhaps you've been called for the interview. You have not been given a feedback, or you did not go through. So we will want to know the organization itself. You know, you have to drill deep into the organization, to the company or the institution. Read about this institution. Know them, know the institution in and out, the objectives of the institution, the vision, the mission of the institution or the company you are applying for. You also need to study the background, the hierarchy of the company, the founders of these organizations. What were their, what interests you, interested them to build this, to start the organization or to start the company. Try to understand the successes of the company itself or the organization where you have applied for, because that will give you a basis. You also need to know the job. Most often, the organizations or companies or institutions do advertise for these jobs opening, but also in the job openings, they give you job descriptions or some basic requirements of the kind of a candidate that they would want to take up this position. They will describe, but you may have an edge into this by maybe knowing a little more about the job, by going into their website. Currently, most companies, most organizations, they give us scanty information on the advert, but also refers you for details in their website. So you need to go into the website, read about this job, get to know how insightful you can be, or what you can develop, or what you can actually bring to table to ensure that this organization or the company gets into your vision, and you're ready to deliver something new that would take the company into another direction of growth. And another thing you need to know, among the 4 golden rules, is that you need to know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, their expertise? Depending on the type of the profession you are actually, the position you are rolling to, what makes you stand out? What are some of the areas that will knock you out if you do not tackle during the interview panel, when you're invited into the panel? So we need to understand this in depth about it. And I talked about knowing the organization, and I summarize it here for you, that you should read about the organization, the founders and the hierarchy, the vision, mission, and objectives of the organization you're applying for. Also, know the immediate competitors. Sometimes we don't want to read much about the competitors of the organizations. There are companies, basically may differ from the hospital settings. Hospitals, they don't so much compete, but they want to also to do their best. But there are companies that are very competitive, name it telecommunication companies. They want to know how, you want to learn about this and what makes their competitors selling than them, and how can you bring this into their docket to improve their productivity and the return. Of course, I've talked about understanding the job, but also the accountability level as a job. The description might be there. You could be a doctor or applying for administrative position in a hospital setting. Know about the accounting levels of the accountability levels of the organization or the institution you are applying or you're facing for the interview. Also, you need to understand the expectations of the job, the expectation of the company. What are they expecting of you? What drove them into advertising for this job? These are the things that you need to act, try as much as possible to do research, analyze yourself. Am I capable for this one? Yes, you may not have all, but if you do intensive research and try to examine yourself and the competitors of the company itself, you will prove that you will stand out as a star in this. What about the required skills? Do I have? Yes, I might have the paper, but do I have an additional papers that will give me an edge? If not, how do I get there? You know, yes, I've already applied for the job. The job is asking for A, B, C, D. I've met the specifics of the job, but how do I scale it up? This is where all what you have been doing at the university, attending workshops, you can bring them into play. Because I attended the workshops of this nature, it was in line with this job. And this is what I can bring. From this workshop, I learned of this. Not necessarily going to a certified institution for these extra skills. Now, the work environment, which kind of work environment do this kind of specific job that has been advertised demands? These are things that I need to know as an applicant, as a person who is going to face the panel. I need to appreciate the working environment within that company and try to learn. Perhaps having learned about the organization, I'm reading about it in online, you can try to hook up with some staff. If there's a referral, then you can hook up with staff, the existing staff, to get to understand what kind of working environment do exist in this company, in this organization. In that, you will be in position to come when you're already psychologically prepared to actually expedite on these job requirements, because you have already known what they want and the kind of the team player you would want to be in the company. Are you a self-driven person? Are you somebody who actually get driven by the goals that has been set? Or can you set your own goals and try to achieve them in line with the mission and vision or the objectives of the organization? Or you are this person who needs to be supervised all the time? So you need to learn that team structure, the management styles, and so forth. The hierarchy I've talked about. The hierarchy in this knowing the job now is about who is most likely to be my immediate supervisor. Whom do I report to in case I'm hired? Who will report to me in case I am hired as a supervisor? Which category of people will I be supervising? These are the groundworks that you need to do prior to the interview date. And you need to acquaint yourself with this. And knowing yourself, this is very fantastic. And for you to go into the interview room before the panel and you do not know who you are, then you are in trouble. Because the first question perhaps would be, tell us about yourself. And you're there, you do not know who you are. Then you start visiting around. This is very dangerous for you. Of course, the panel will always try to make it as easy as possible to make yourself composed, but know your attribute. Know the extreme critical parts or the issues that makes you who you are, that makes you stand out very extinct to be suitable for this job position. I guarantee you, if you do not know yourself as a star person, you will not land the dream job that you would want to get. I tell you from the point of experience that majority of our graduates today, they come with beautiful papers, first class, second class, upper class. Yes, you are star on the genuine, the paper are good, but you do not know yourself. And this plays a very critical role in your recruitment process with the company. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? whether you will like it or not, Bonny Mark has a weakness. Bonny Mark has his areas of strength. I need to identify my strength. I need to identify my weaknesses, because in that, that is the way I will be in position to position myself. In case I'm asked about my strength, or in case I'm approaching a particular a situational question, or I'm faced with a situation that demands my emotions and mental strength and quick thinking, I would like to know, where is this area of my point of weakness? How do I respond? If I'm a manager and something has happened abruptly, or my superior has called me, given me a abrupt assignment, I need to take action. Am I this person who just say, I don't want, I am tired of this. Every time you're being stormed with an abrupt activity, you have to identify your weaknesses and strengths. But what, most importantly, I have to prefer, I must know the management skills that perhaps I would work comfortable with. If I'm this person who would not want to be closely supervised, I'm a self-supervised person. I want to be, I want to sell it out, because in that people, companies, organizations would want to know those people, or want to recruit the human resources which are self-motivated to do a particular task that they are being hired for. And they are not, I mean, they set targets. Yes, of course, your superiors will set targets. But if you are not self-supervised, perhaps you will not meet their goals. You will not meet the goals of the organization. You will not meet you will not achieve the objectives of the positions you are being recruited for. So when you're facing these interview panelists, you want to know, they want to know, and you will also want to compose yourself in such a way that you know exactly what type of management skills or styles you would want to work with. And your motivation, what motivates you to go and work with that organization? What is this that motivates you to, I mean, what motivated you to first go for that profession? If I'm a doctor and every time patients are being trickled in, and I'm this rude person, and people would wonder, was this by calling? Was this just for the sake of survival? What was your motivation? Some of the things we do it because we are called to, we have a passion, we have a heart, and it is something you keep on as you're growing, as you're going through the institutions, getting through these trainings. You are trying to shape yourself and try to identify these things that on the spot triggers you to take action. And that could be your motivation. And I would like to believe that this will take you to measuring your success, because your success can only be measured by the motivation and the passion that you have for a particular job or assignment and task that it is before you. How do I measure my success? How would you want to be measured in terms of your turnover, in terms of your output in a job environment for that particular job you're applying for? Because you have learned the job, you know the job specifics, and you know the organizations. Perhaps you have learned a little bit more about the organizations, and now, boom, you have tried to assess in yourself, how will I want to be, I mean, how will they measure my success within 1 week, within 1 month? Of course, the staff people will always identify these things super fast. Go into the organization, take some few days learning the dynamics, and within a month you have known this person like this. There's a weakness in this department like this. I mean, you want to scale up your game, and you want to stand out at some point. So that you have to find out, try to derive a way how you would want your goals or your returns to be measuring your success, and you'll have to identify this. I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Joan, who will take us through the preparation for the interview questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bonny. That was very extensive introduction. Okay, a very extensive presentation. It was very lovely. And thank you very much, Lisa and Nicole, for organizing this. And I'm very happy to be here. And hi, everyone. The fellows, are they fellows? And everyone out there, I'm really happy. And although I cannot see you, but I'm happy that you're there and I'm communicating to people out there. Yes, so how do we prepare for interview questions? Just a bit of, not recap from what Bonny Mark said, but just a bit of reflection. Before you go for an interview, I think it's very important to be very honest with yourself and to be very calm and relaxed as possible. Because definitely it's a competition. It's not only you who is gone for this interview, you'll find several others, maybe 10 or 15 or, very many, and you're all competing for the same job. So for you to be able to get the best out of yourself is you need to be very calm, very composed, very relaxed, and very confident at the same time, because everyone comes for this interview. Some get the jobs, some don't get the jobs. So why you have to be confident and composed is so that all these strong and good attributes in you can actually be recognized. Because when you're panicking, there's a way you just mix up everything. And then you remember after you have left the interview room that, oh, I should have mentioned this, I should have mentioned that. And just a small recap on what Bonny said about knowing yourself. When you're going for the interview, you're actually going to market yourself. You're going to market your knowledge, you're going to market your skills, you're going to market your personal attributes, you're going to market your strength, and you're going to mask your weaknesses. You don't exactly mention all your weaknesses to the interviewer. That is going to kind of negatively affect you in the sense that you're likely not to get the job. So you talk about your weaknesses in a very clever way. You don't say, oh, I think I'm a bit lazy. I think I struggle with time. Well, you may be struggling with time, but you could talk about it in a different way that, I make effort to, come maybe to work on time. Yes, so confidence is very, very important, and honesty about yourself is very, very important. So yeah, you need to focus a lot on the interview questions, because many times when you're posed with a question, sometimes you're in a rush to answer. I mean, of course you get the feeling of I need to answer immediately, but it's not like you should answer anything. I think it's good to always give it a bit of 1-2 minutes, think through, and then find the exact way in which to approach the question. Because the way you start answering a question will also give an impression of how much you know about the subject, or of how much at what angles you really want to approach the question. And how much information you have, that you can use to be able to respond to the question. So when you give it a bit of 1-2 minutes, it will give you time to reorganize your mind and be able to give the best approach to this question that is quite impressive, okay? Yeah, so most of the interview questions, we categorize them as traditional questions, situational questions, and then behavior-based questions. So basically, these are all grouped in a way to help get the best out of you. There's no particular clear cut, oh, this is traditional, this is situational, this is behavioral. They're just kind of clustered so that all together, they're able to get the best attributes out of you as a person, to find you the most fit candidate to take up this job after the interview. So it's important to be very wise as you answer the questions for the interview. Now, in traditional questions, usually we know that, for example, we have gone to school all of us have gone to school. Some have been to business school, others have been to medical school, others to maybe human resource, social works, and everything. So we all went to school to acquire skills and knowledge about that subject or about that profession. So in the traditional questions, they basically, the interviewer really wants to get your knowledge and competences from the school, from what you acquired in school, okay? Because it is one thing to go to school and study and get all this knowledge and get all these skills, but it's another thing to actually put this knowledge in practice, to be able to apply this knowledge in a good way that is going to help the organization grow. So before you go for the interview, of course, you have read widely, you have made a recap on all the things you learned in school, but it's also important to figure out in your mind how you're going to make it sound practical, such that if they've asked you something about your field, they may maybe ask you to, maybe next slide. So just want to understand, just a minute, I think let me control this. Yeah, for example, they may ask you, tell us about your university, what appeals you about this position. Of course, they want to understand more about where you went to study and what you're able to acquire in the university and how you're able to apply these skills and competences that you acquired in relation to the job calling or the job opportunity that you have been, that they're interviewing you for. So the traditional questions that they may ask you, and they just want a little more depth of your knowledge and how you're going to be able to apply it in this organization. So they may also ask you what is the greatest value that you will bring to this organization. They really want to see how you're going to apply, maybe like I'm a doctor, I learned about emergency care. They want to see how I'm going to actually bring this medicine I have learned into the organization. They may ask you, do you work well with terms? Definitely every organization has terms and conditions. They have their objectives, their visions. They want to see whether you're able to fit within the requirements of the organization. And they want to see how comfortable and confident you are to be able to fit within their requirements. So as you go, you need to have prepared your mind, being able to comprehend, like to combine what you learned in school and be able to incorporate into this organization needs, and then you can give your response. They may also ask you about your leadership and management style. Of course, here, if you've been in any positions of leadership, you'll be able to actually give an example of how you applied your skills that you had acquired in school and how you managed to actually lead a team in an organization or in a job that you have worked before. So as part of the traditional questions, they may ask you, where do you want to be in 5 years? So here, they want to really assess growth or use in your job career. And of course, when you plan to advance in your job career, they know in the long run, it will also help to improve on the growth of the company. So it is good for us as aspirants of jobs when you're going for interviews to always have those targets or those points in our mind of, okay, I'm a doctor, I need to study and maybe add and do a master's degree and do a certificate in this and do a research in this. So when you have all those well arranged in your mind, it will be very easy to give back those responses of how you want to grow your career and how you want to advance in your skills and in your knowledge. And here you'll stand a bigger chance to be offered the job because they see that you're already prepared to grow yourself and eventually grow the company. So for situational questions, these basically want to assess your readiness to respond to emergency situations, okay? For traditional, yes, you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you can do accounting, you can do marketing, you can do all these things which are in the normal way. But there are times when we are going to be faced with emergency. Something comes up and it requires immediate attention. How are you ready to attend to this emergency? For example, if you're an accountant and something comes up and they need you to quickly verify funds to sort out an emergency need. Definitely, when they ask you these questions, they want to see how ready you are. So before you go for the interview, always have in mind on how you're going to handle some of these emergency things so that it will give them the impression, the interviewers, it will give them the impression that actually you can manage in crisis. If crisis comes in, like for us doctors, you're on your duty station and then a patient walks in and they need to be attended to immediately and you must do the right thing there and then. If you fail to do it, then you're going to lose the patient. So they assess that readiness. So you always have to have in mind on how you're going to achieve all those. For example, they would ask you, what kind of person would you like to hire for this position? They really want to assess whether you could even actually hire yourself, you know? They may ask you, what would you do with an employee who is always late for work? Yes, there are these emergency situations. Normally, we are supposed to come to work very early on time and do everything as it's supposed to be according to the standard operating procedures. But there are times when you're challenged and you must work. You must act in a composed manner, and you must produce results. Okay, so handle this. Like they will ask you, will you stop working when you get married? But if your mind is not prepared and you have not worked before, you'll think, oh, I think I need to give it a bit of time, maybe some 2 years before I get back to work. So it is just good to have a view on how you're going to be able to prepare for the emergency situations. They may also ask you, how would you ensure long-term success with our company within the first week? So here, it is important to always be very, very honest with yourself and accept to be yourself, okay? Because we need to know that we are all gifted differently. We all have talents, okay? I'm sure you'll agree with me that there are things that you could see. Maybe you walk into a room and maybe in a classroom or in a house or at a workshop, and then immediately you will notice something is not right. You've not been there before, but for the first time you're just walking and there you are, you just observe. So for the next 1 week, you've been able to see all these so many things that nobody else could see. So it is important to know that we are always not to be shy differently. that not every other person will see, but it is only you that sees them differently. So it is okay to appear different, but if it's appearing different in a good way, you should not be shy to mention them, okay? So for the behavior-based questions, the interviewers really want to identify and determine the job-related success factors. And here they want to assess your skills, your knowledge, your behavior, your performance, and your motivation, okay? They want to find out or to assess how flexible are you? How much can you adapt to the changes in the company? How much can you adapt to to everything new in the company? And how much do you pay attention to detail? And how creative are you? Of course, knowing that we are all different and we are all special and we are all talented, it's also very important that you know exactly who you are. We are different. There are people who are extroverts, you know, they just get into a new place and they are friends with everyone. Everybody loves them. Everyone listens to them. There are those who are introverts out there and everyone is running up to them, okay? So if I know I'm an introvert and I'm not somebody who is always running out and people are going to keep liking me, I have to know and see how I can help myself and do what I do best, okay? So knowing who you are and knowing how you do your things, it is important to be able to assess yourself and help yourself. If you think you're too quiet and people find it hard to come around you, you make sure you do your work very well. Don't pretend to be the happy and, you know, excited person. No, just be yourself and try to do the best that you can do to achieve all these, to achieve. So they might ask you to describe a situation in which you had to adjust to change over which you had no control. For example, you wake up in the morning, you're not prepared for a meeting, and then your superior or your supervisor asks you to actually chair a meeting. How are you going? Oh, you didn't tell me in time, and then that, or are you going to organize a meeting? They may ask you to describe the most demanding manager you have worked with and how you're able to adapt to them. Yeah, so these are just examples of how you can show your skills of being able to adapt to tough situations, okay? They may also ask you to tell us about an instance when you found errors in your work and how did you deal with them? Or they may ask you to give an instance when you benefited from paying attention to detail. Like any company or any organization, we all have visions and missions and objectives. And all these, they also have a standard operation. If you come things that you're able to prove that you have paid attention to detail, I think it will give you an upper hand in that the interviewer will see you as somebody who is fit and will be able to help the other job members or your workmates to follow the procedures and help them acquire or get the goals of the organization. And so you'll stand a chance to get the job. To assess your creativity, they might ask you, describe an innovative idea that you developed that
think Doctor seems to have been gone a bit, but she was talking about the creative and innovations questions. So
Yeah, sorry, my internet was disturbing, but I think by and large, I could say thank you very much. We can continue with the presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Bonny Mark.
thank you, Doctor, for taking us through that. Members, we are going straight into the STAR method application. And the STAR method application, as we talked about it, the word is STAR, and it is an abbreviation or an acronym. Sometimes you would want to use the double R to stand for S standing for situational, T standing for task, and A standing for action. This is the things that we will be diving into right away into the practical aspect of it. ARA means results, and also at the same time there's another silent R meaning reflection. Having done the situational analysis, the task you undertook, the action taken, results, you would want to reflect on the goals. So we want to see a basic example, and doctor will come in to give us from our perspective of a medical person, a medical personnel, and working in a medical facility. I'd like to take you through one simple example of a driver who applied for a job of a driving job in a company, and he was asked, describe a critical situation you have been confronted with. The driver had to look into the situation, and the situation was unsafe driving through the streets in the middle of a violent student rioting on the street. Imagine a big university, students are rioting, and you have to drive through. What task did this driver do? He drove off the staff home safely without being lynched or being affected by the rioting students or the rioters. Other actions that this driver took was he took back the streets he got the back street of the university to avoid the rioters, and took shelter and waited for the situation to first improve before he could deliver back the van or the school vehicle to the parking lot. What was the results here? He managed to ensure safety of the staff first, and also implemented thorough security procedures as per the job description, because he is responsible for the truck. I mean, for the university or the institutional vehicle, and he had to take custody of that with a lot of precaution. So he managed to beat all this in a very superb way. So taking on from this example, you know that there was a situation. Task was being given to this driver. Action he took, and the results was foreseen. It was accurately displayed by managing not to let any staff, get into the rioting rioters, maybe to beat them or to harm them. So this was fantastic for the driving job. So this, using the STAR method to illustrate your experience through concrete examples, like, for example, I've already given there, will give you an edge over someone who is also coming to compete with you for the same position. And some of these questions includes, what are your greatest strengths? We have talked about this. How do I approach that in a STAR method? And I'd like to bring in doctor to perhaps get us through this as a medical doctor, as somebody who has gone through all this a couple of times, and at the facility where she is actually not only working, but also in a region where she's working as a consultant for the children healthcare services. Doctor, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think it's important to always have an open mind and be willing to just, you know, to learn, I would call it, because learning is endless. You can learn from anyone. You can learn from, you know, passerbys on the streets. You can learn from old people. You can learn from children. You can learn from your colleagues, from your seniors. So I think having a relaxed, a free mind, an open mind, and this willingness. Sometimes we are timid with ourselves, you know? You're there and you think, oh, I cannot do this. I think it's only that one who can do this. Oh, I think I want to be like my friend. I want to be like Nicole. I want to be like Lisa. And we forget that we have these things about us that Lisa may not have, but, you know, I'm forgetting about my own strength and I'm looking at what Lisa has just because I think what Lisa has is better than mine. So I think it's good to relax and just know yourself and do what you feel is happy and comfortable for you. And we all know our strength because, you know, as we grow up, for example, our parents may see us and may know what we can do. But there are times when maybe our parents may think that you're not so good for a particular task. But within yourself, you believe you can actually do it. So once you have belief in you, then you can be able to achieve and actually get out and be able to actually do all these things because you're ready, you're willing, and you just want to give chance to everything that you have been asked to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, let's go through those steps and we'll see steps to preparing your answers using this STAR method approach. One, you need to measure. The measuring process includes planning and organizational abilities. As an interviewee, you need to plan for that interview thoroughly well. You need to be organized. You must possess the ability to do this. Persistence is key in this, looking at the tenacity of the job you're applying for and the organization. The interpersonal skills are key and attention to details. Doctor talked about this in those approaches. But when it comes here, you need to arrange those chronologically. The planning process as you prepare for your interview, the persistence in the process, the interpretation and interpersonal skills that you will possess and display at the interview panel. Then you have to give in-depth knowledge of what the experience that you are trying to bring forth as an illustration, as part of your experience that the organization should actually take advantage of to give you your dream job. The other thing is problem solving. I must possess that because we talked about this. If you do not possess the problem solving and the issues pops up, you are in problem. You will be arguing with your supervisor more often because things will be open up. You don't want to do critical thinking and take action as swift as possible. These are the areas that I need. You as an applicant need to possess the problem-solving skills as well. So let's go into the activities, and I would like to invite Doctor to take us through these activities. Questions are there, and how we can go forth with this. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Bonny. So let's answer the following questions using the STAR method. Question 1, measuring planning and organization. Give me a specific example of a project you planned. How did you organize and schedule your task? Tell me about your action plan. So is it me to give you my experience? Or it's the scholars?
just a sample of this with the perspective from your medical field, but some of this will be left out for scholars to actually try to bring an insight following what are the examples you have already given.
So I give my own example.
It's from the experience.
Okay. Well, now I do a lot of things. Now, to be honest, I don't even know how I do them. But I run a business for children that's quite demanding. You have patients asking for me, they want to see me in person. At the same time, I have a family. I have 4 sons who are very energetic and strong, and a husband who all need my time. And then I have a government job. I have to look after children in the regional referral hospital. So this is like too much, really. Literally, if you look at it, it's a lot to think of how I'm going to achieve all these. But how do I do this? Usually I plan my time. I plan my activities. I plan my the times I'm going to be at a particular place, and then I schedule my tasks. I know maybe weekend and some days I'm in the clinic. Then some days when I'm not in the children's facility clinic, I'm in Moroto, like now I am working. So it's basically having a schedule on how I'm going to achieve my goals. And also I be consistent. I try to be consistent and persistent in all these activities. Sometimes, of course, you make your programs and your schedules, and you realize that time is catching up with you. You've not been able to achieve everything at a go. Well, because of persistence and consistency, I just keep going and keep trying to do what I'm supposed to do as scheduled. Of course, not to weigh down myself, but I just do my best not to give up on the project. I just keep being persistent and consistent and keeping the schedules and reviewing the results or the outcome or the results of my actions that I have taken. I hope that's comprehensive to give an example of how I'm able to measure my planning and organizational abilities. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. The next thing we need to understand when we're preparing for this STAR method is measuring persistence. There are questions that will strictly be asked to describe a situation in which you were unable or you were able to reach a goal because you refused to give up. How long did you persist? Sometimes you try option A, it fails. Option B, it fails. Must I give up? No, I have to continuously persist. And in this process, we need to understand the situation and bring it pretty clear. And these are some of the assignments that we would want to see our scholars present here bringing, for example, and maybe during question and answer, we will run through with them. Or measuring interpersonal skills. Describe a situation in which you wish you had acted differently in a situation that perhaps faced you and you needed to be there to give a response. But unfortunately, the action you took, perhaps you are regretting. But yes, you solved the issue, but you did not completely comprehend it the way you would have thought. So describe that situation in which you wished you had taken a different action, and how did you do it? What happened, in the process? You need to understand all this. These are the guiding questions, and I know as time goes by, the more you face yourself with some of this, try to analyze the situation for an interview, it may not be that you have had a wealth of experience over the previous job. You're getting out of campus, but there were situations that faced you and you needed to take action. You needed to use your interpersonal skills to take action and bring a solution to table. You have to try to analyze such situations as you get out. You're in the leadership position at the university. You're in a leadership position in a club or in your community. You can drive some of these examples home. And then measuring attention. The interviewers they're very tactical, and they would want you to give examples of times when you knew things were not going on well, and with a particular project or processes or an activity to mention. And they will ask you, how did you know? What did you do to correct that problem? Sometimes we see this problem coming, or we knowingly or unknowingly, but sometimes we want to pay in-depth attention to ensure that the real issues is addressed, and not only being addressed in a casually, but addressing it to details, digging deep. What was the cause of the problem? How did it happen? How do we go forward? And making every party or everyone involved. In a medical field, perhaps you are given an overdose. The problem came in the process of something. And the doctor perhaps will have some experience in this. She will share it with us in the process. But we need to get along with that and see, this problem came, I overdosed the patient, and how did I cope to revert the situation, or to try to reverse the situation. And measuring problems, questions like, we can sometimes identify a smaller problem and fix it before it becomes a bigger challenge or a bigger problem. Give me an example of when you have done this before in your previous workplace, or as a student or as a student leader. Give us how you dealt with this. Some few examples of what you did to carve down a problem. Measuring problem solving skills. Doctor, is there anything you can share with us about this before we move forward? Attention to details, giving example of a situation where... Yes, doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bonny. I must say that we should not fear to make mistakes, okay? Because it's from a mistake that we learn. If you've not done something, you will never know how it is done, okay? I'm not encouraging us to go and make mistakes, no. But we may learn things in school. We may learn about disease conditions in school. But then because it's on paper, it's a different story when you get in hospital, when you're seeing the patients. For example, they may tell you about side effects of particular drugs, and you know them in the books, okay? But because you have not actually experienced a patient having these side effects, it won't make a lot of sense in your mind that I should avoid maybe giving a bit of an extra dose to this patient. I'm a pediatrician, and for us, when you're giving drugs, it has to be, the drug dose has to be calculated according to the weight of the child, okay? Because children are in different, as they grow, they become heavier. So if you give a bit of a higher dose to a child, this child might actually get a very bad side effect that could even actually kill them. So it's very, very important for us to pay attention to detail. But of course, sometimes you may never know how serious this virtue is until you're faced with a situation when actually someone comes to your hospital and they just collapse after a particular drug. For example, there are some drugs, when you're giving them, you don't rush. You have to give it slowly over maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So if you don't read that caution on the leaflet on how to give this drug, you will actually you will miss it, and then the next minute the patient is collapsing. So of course it's a bad way of learning that next time you know that you actually have to be very, very careful. But well, you learn somehow. But of course, it is very good to always take precaution and know how to handle, different job needs before you actually do them. But you should not fear to try to do a job or to try to do an activity or to try to take a task because you're afraid of making a mistake, okay? Because that's what we call audit. We look back. For example, we know, yes, patients come, they are sick, we treat them. Some may not make it, some may die. It is sad. But you have to do audit to find out what made this patient die. Why were we not able to completely heal this patient or to completely do whatever it was supposed to be done to heal this patient? So you go back and study the issues around the patient's sickness, around the treatment of the patient, around the way we acted when the patient was getting complications. And then from there, we learn that, okay, I think next time when I get a patient who has similar complaints, I need to handle it this way. I need to avoid that. I need to do this. So please don't be afraid to do something or to try out any activity. It helps you to assess your competence and to assess your weaknesses, and it will help you see how you can do it better next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for keenly listening to us. And we have come to the end of our presentation, and we'd like to take it over to, hand it over to Nicole for any question and answers session. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. So we have a few minutes left. Should anyone have any last minute questions related to the STAR method, or since we do have Bonnie Mark and Dr. Joan with us, this is also an opportunity if you have any direct questions for either of them. Keeping in mind, Bonnie Mark has a wealth of information related to working in the fields of running a for-profit business in the ICT sector, and also education with the school and NGO hiring and interviewing. Likewise, Dr. Joan has extensive background in the medical field, both public and private. So any questions related to the interview processes in those sectors as well. So let us just give a moment here. Some people may have questions, so we'll see if any pop up. One question that has come in is for Dr. Joan. When conducting or when hosting an interview with a new medical school graduate, what do you look for the most?
Should I answer that right away?
Please, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Yes, if I'm having a new graduate from school, a new doctor, and for the interview, usually it's confidence. I look at this young doctor and I want to see if she's confident to deal with patients. because to deal with life, you need to be confident and you need to prove to me that you can actually help to save this life when they come in your office. So, and then I'll go ahead to assess your knowledge, basic skills of life support in social, management, of taking the history of the patient, what are the main complaints of the patient? Are you able to examine the patient and then be able to assess the patient and be able to come up with a diagnosis? And then I want to see if you can quickly pick out the signs in the patient and make a diagnosis, and then quickly in your mind start up something immediately, the treatment plan for this patient, and then the follow-up. And then I also assess how well you're able to work with your fellow colleagues, the nurses, the doctors, the lab, and your seniors, and even students, because coming to work in a hospital, you're not just coming to work as a doctor treating patients, but you're coming to be part of a whole organization that is, it's not just a job, but it's a livelihood. It's how are you able to relate with everyone? You should be a resource. Everyone should be happy to have you, and they should be happy to interact with you, to come and consult you. I should be able to see that a nurse will freely come to ask for clarification, maybe about a dosage, and then even the patient will really be free to open up and tell you all their, what is paining them and how they need to be helped. I just need to see all those skills in you. And then I also want to see that you're humble enough to accept learning, because you have to accept that you're a fresh graduate and you need to be guided. So time and again, I need to see that you're humble enough or receptive enough to accept guidance, to accept correction, to accept new tasks, to accept maybe a challenge. I want to see how critical you are at acquiring skills and your willingness to learn and your confidence and strength and courage to face every new challenge every day. Yeah, just being able to assess that you're free and happy and young and excited to take up this job, and being able to accept to learn new things, really. Thank you.
Great. That was very valuable advice. And I know that many of our recent medical graduates joined us for this webinar and also will be watching the recording. So I will make sure to make sure they know at what time in the recording is this valuable advice. Bonny Mark, one question for you related to hiring for Nisi Telecom, your ICT business. When you receive many applicants for one job, you have one position open, how many individuals do you call back for the first interview? And how can someone stand out in that process to make you want to meet them perhaps in person or to hire them?
Okay. If there are several applicants that has applied for a single position or a job opening at Nisi Telecom, for example, and yet perhaps I need only one or two of them. First, before you are dragged to court, you must try to be as thorough as possible. You made an advert, these people qualified, all of them qualified. Now, the first screening is the paper. but which kind of qualification was being asked? Are all the applicants who have applied for this position qualifies for this position? If yes, then I will shortlist all of them and invite them for an aptitude test before oral. But if there are few or many of them were not, I first filter off those who have applied, but they do not qualify for the position. Those ones will not be invited for the aptitude test. And if there are many, put them in the aptitude test. The first line